we have to keep in mind that an image is made to be seen. So it's basically a dialogue with whoever is watching. So you have to be careful about what you're saying through your image. We could, blend different techniques and approaches to have something that is visually authentic. But does the message carried by this image, is this message authentic? This happened at some point when I was doing a lot of battle scenes. It was cool, but at some point I was like, I'm so pacific myself. I hate violence, I hate like conflict and all these kind of things. But I'm like, if I die tomorrow and people see my art, it's like, that's not really me, even though it's visually impacting, visually appealing, right? So that's the question I asked myself over the last month. As I told you, it's more about the content and what is your message rather than the technique.
Welcome to the BoldBrush Show, where we believe that fortune favors the bold brush. My name is Laura Engelbayer, and I'm your host. For those of you who are new to the podcast, we are a podcast that covers art marketing techniques and all sorts of business tips specifically to help artists learn to better sell their work. We interview artists at all stages of their careers, as well as others who are in careers tied to the art world in order to hear their advice and insights. On this episode, we sat down with Mathieu Nozieres, a French oil painter based in the United States with a passion for creating complex narrative oil paintings reminiscent of the Paris Salon painters of the 19th century. We discuss the importance of listening to your inner voice even when your teachers are telling you the opposite, why branding can be useful so long as you're still true to your authentic voice, how to learn illustration techniques to create narrative paintings that look realistic, and why what your art says is just as important, if not more so, than only creating a beautiful painting. Finally, we talk about his current group exhibition at Haven Gallery, where both his painting and his wife's painting are hanging side by side for a show called Duality, his upcoming group exhibition with Beautiful Bazaar magazine happening later this year, and finally, he tells us about his new prints coming out soon. So, welcome, Mathieu, to the BoldBrush Show. I'm so excited to have you on because you are, you're like, I imagine if Jean-Léon Gérôme were alive today, it would be you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There's still some miles to go, but thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's something wonderful to aspire to, though, because your work, for our listeners, obviously, you're gonna tell us a little bit more about you, but your work is extremely complex and also very detailed, very narrative, which is why it reminds me so much of that time period of academic painting where it was very historic, and it's so freaking cool. Plus,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, 19th century is like a peak for oil painting. These salon paintings, even though they didn't leave a big mark in art history for most of them, you have Jérôme, of course, and everything, but most of them were very, very technical, but they didn't leave, such a crazy mark because they, like Delacroix did, for instance, or other people. But when you like technique, these works, they are like the pinnacle. I don't know how to say the top,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So I definitely take a lot of inspiration from there. And I also try to balance it artistically to also try to, how to say, not be only too much into technique, but also into creativity and so on. So it's a balance to be found. But when I need to learn about technique, I'm digging into the 19th century and these guys, like you said, like Jérôme and all the crew.
Yeah. And we can dive into more about technique and why, that balance is so important. After you tell us a little bit about you, what you do, who you are.
Oh yeah, so my name is Mathieu. I come from France. You actually spelled my name right, which is nice because it's Mathieu in French. Yeah. And my last name is Nozieres, which is absolutely impossible to pronounce for the Americans. I even thought about like changing it because nobody can pronounce it. So Mathieu Nozieres. I was born in France, just moved to the States permanently. Paperwork is done. It's all this thing is over. So I'm ready to start a new chapter here. And well, I drew since I was a kid. I discovered painting, the painting like the type of painting I'm doing now. I discovered it really late. I started painting when I was 21. So, but I was drawing since a kid, but I was doing comic books. My dream was to be a comic book artist. at 11 years old, when I was a child, I was like copying Snoopy characters. But yeah, making my own stories with them. And I remember being in the living room, and I was in Santa Barbara back then because my dad came to work for 1 year in the States. So we all moved here. And that's why I happened to copy Snoopy and not, I don't know, other characters from Friends, right? And I remember being a small kid in the living room drawing, and there was like a nice sunshine, by the window. Everything was so peaceful. And I was drawing, and I was like, this is what I want to do. It's so nice. It makes me so happy. So I was really like into comics since a kid. And the funny thing is, I didn't like painting at all. It's not like whatever. It's really, I was like, I hate painting. I just want to do comics. And it was when I was obliged to go to the museum when I was in high school, because I was into an artistic section. I was always like, why should we go to the museum? Look at these old paintings. It's the dead people painting other dead people. What the hell? And and when I did an Erasmus exchange in Romania later on, when I was at university, I arrived there and they didn't have a comic section. They only had painting. So I started painting, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. Because the more I was digging into drawing, the more I was attracted by technique.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you're attracted by technique, the closer you get at some point to oil painting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it came at the right timing. And I just loved it. And since then, there were no way back. I just quitted everything. No more comics, no more anything, no more music, and just like oil painting, oil painting, oil painting. And today, right now, I'm trying to search a bridge between these comics from the past and the oil painting. So yeah, I started drawing, comics, painting, and now trying to blend both. Yeah, that's the path.
Yes. And I will say you're doing it successfully, because your work, I love that it has that classical sort of antique or antiquity sort of like touch, especially in that painting that you made, where I can just imagine, like I picture like this white horse and there's like all of this crazy composition going on around it, if I remember correctly. Could be going crazy. But I love that, you blend that with, the sort of like imaginative side of comics. So you have your dragons and you have all of these crazy elements that even I think the academics would have been like, wow. Because actually, now that I remember, there is an academic painter who did have a dragon in one of his paintings. Leighton. Yeah, Lord Frederick Leighton. He had a really cool dragon in one of his.
Oh, I should check it out.
Yeah, you would love that dragon because it has like this cool flame coming out of its
Okay,
mouth. And it has this bright red eye. And it's God, he was really great at also having like sort of that
definitely.
mixture. Yeah, so
Y-
100% recommend.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the imaginative part is very important to me, the narrative, because I come from a comic book background. So at first, I was also attracted to tell stories, right?
Yeah.
And when I discovered painting in Romania, I started with contemporary art. Like I was into the figurative movement, but inside contemporary art, so with the contemporary thinking, because that's what they were teaching me at school. So they I don't want to cast them any stone, but they somehow try to discourage me to be narrative because it was too close to illustration. And contemporary art, it has its own system, let's say, and it's much more conceptual. So they were trying to drag me towards the conceptual side, and I was split in my mind because I've always been about imagination and narratives. And at the same time, I was learning. I was a fresh student discovering oil painting. So I was like, I should believe them because, they're the pros. So I should have faith in what they say. And I've been a little harsh with them for a long time afterward because I felt they made me lose time because they took me off my path. But in the same time, it made me discover something also that I wouldn't have explored otherwise. So narration, as you said, is very important to me, and that's why I love narrative paintings. And all the American painters, who are also at the frontier with illustration, like what's his name, Dean Cornwell, Leon Decker, all these kind of people, They inspire me a lot because I feel they found a nice blend between being an illustrator and being an oil painter. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know I what I also love about your work is the fact that it blends that illustration so nicely that it doesn't feel like illustration most of the time. When I look at your work, I'm like, oh, this is just like what, the academics were doing, for the
Mm-hmm.
salon. Um, but at the same time, it is illustration because, and I love to make this comparison whenever I talk to people about illustration, is that if you look at any of the paintings by the old masters, even, in the Renaissance and antiquity, no one looks like that. Absolutely no one looks like the paintings that they make. It's like they transform reality in a way that makes it, it brings it to its essence, but then at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
it's recognizable, right? Which at its core, that's illustration, right? So how do you recommend, right? Because there are so many people out there who, they love realism, but maybe they're on that path of they're torn between like, oh, I want to do realism, but I love narrative. How do you
Mm-hmm.
recommend that maybe they learn illustration in order to lead them more towards narrative?
Yeah. So the thing I think, in my opinion, is to work the fundamentals and structure. When people are into realism, like hardcore realism, they would tend to copy the reality um, with the tendency to fall in the trap of copying reality without really understanding it, right? So I think if you work structure and you're also passionate about understanding how things work, in from the inside, meaning, structure, anatomy, all these kind of things, then it will be way easier later on when you want to do illustration, because illustration, there's a big part of inventing what you do. You cannot really have a model of like a dragon with like gladiators and a whole coliseum, right? So this is gonna happen a lot with your knowledge. But because you want your painting to look believable, because you like realism like I do, then you also need observational skills. So basically work the fundamentals, work, how to observe. And then when you create, you just merge both, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of observation. And then you'll have like a, let's say, realistic illustration.
So that would mean like the person would have to, for example, apply that knowledge, but also attempt, for example, to draw from imagination completely, like no reference or
Yeah, exactly. Or you can build your own reference. For instance, you could like, sometimes I asked when I was back in France at some point, I asked my little brother. I have a painting named Dust with that was like uh Arabic warriors fighting in the
Mhm.
desert, and you have like a warrior with like wings, winged horse and everything. And this was painted in France when I was in my hometown, and my little brother was posing for me with like a frying pan for the shield, a broom for the right.
Yeah.
And once you have this photo, you just transpose it to your painting, and because you have your knowledge, you change all the temperatures, you change the color if needed, you rearrange a bit the position to make it more dynamic. So that's where knowledge and observation blends. But if you don't have the knowledge and you simply copy what you see, then how to paint if there is nothing to be seen? It's just in your mind, then you're stuck. So yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
that's very
Yeah.
important to me.
Yeah, I
And it comes from
agree.
my comic book background. When in comics, you mostly work from imagination. So this really
Exactly.
helped.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's one of the most understated things that anyone should do, right? I think, because I went to two academic schools. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's always just observe, observe, observe. If you actually in one school, it was like, even if you see it, don't put it if it doesn't make the painting better. And then in the other school, it was like, no, you put everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh
So
yeah, okay,
it's
see.
it's a huge clash of it's like, okay, but I don't want to put this one thing in it because it's ugly. And I understand the value, right? Of okay, you have to learn how to do it in order to undo it, right? In order to
Mm-hmm.
get that fundamental and then, apply it in a way that makes sense. Like if your model shifts, okay, that's easy to fix if you
Hmm.
know anatomy because you know what's supposed to be there and what's not supposed to be there, right? So I think, I agree with you about, learning the fundamentals, following it up with, that either transposing from pictures, which of course
Hmm.
that's something else that's a bit of a hot topic with certain academic groups. They're like
Hmm.
anti-pictures, only from reality, which I don't I don't get the
Yeah.
problem completely, especially if you're already trained, right? Actually, how do you feel about using pictures? I'm sure you use them, but have you ever had any backlash about it?
Yeah, so I have kind of a specific process. Um, in the end, I believe it's where the final goal is to make a picture, right?
Mhm.
So what is important is for your final picture to look good. If you want to paint only from reality and it looks good, then fine. If you want to paint only from reality but it looks like shit, then not fine, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a matter of finding your process to make the final image look good. So yeah, because I went I visited many different professional fields and communities because I started in comics, then contemporary art, then I switched to fine art, then I'm going towards like illustration. I've seen the different mindsets, and how everyone is like, how to say, targeting the other, like trying to
Yeah.
find and critics and everything.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel that in the end, the most important and what we're all concerned with is making good image. So you have like the old fine artists, like not old, but like the very traditional fine artists who are like, if you don't paint from reality, then you're not like it's I don't know how to say it's not hardcore enough. It's not
Mhm.
authentic. Then you have contemporary art, which says like if you do something where technique is the goal or is important, then it's worthless. Then you have the comic books who are like all these people, they're just like nosy, they don't understand anything, right? So it's like a big, everyone's talking, and in the
Mhm.
end, just focus on the final image and that's it. So that's what I did at some point, and I said, how can I make my image look good? So I was, as I told you, using both imagination and people posing when I needed. So I took these people in photo and just um, painted it. At some point, I felt like sometimes it becomes difficult when you have like horses and everything. How do I do this? So I started to do like, photo bash on Photoshop, trying to find many pictures, crop them, use do like a collage to have like a roadmap. But the same, I was feeling it's a little, I don't know how to say in English. You're trying to glue parts and it just
Yeah.
laborious. Then I said, okay, I'm gonna do my, little sculptures. So I took like sculpture class at the fine art school of my city, evening class with all the like the retired people. And I started to do the little sculptures, and it was too long, right? And I was feeling that I'm putting so much effort into sculpture while my final goal once again is to make an oil painting. So at some point, I was exploring so many things that I ended up like with Playmobiles, setting up composition with Playmobiles because it was faster in sculpture. I had the direction of lighting. So I was doing my
Mhm.
little maquettes, or buying like toy horses in shops. Yeah, all these kind of things. And at some point I was stuck with a painting on a deadline and I was having problem to go further because I tried everything. My little brother posing, that's the dust painting I told you about. Playmobiles, blah 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 blah, and there was something wrong and I couldn't spot what. So I booked a mentorship out from the blue with a guy named Devin Corwin, who's really really good at teaching color theory and everything, probably the best right now. And he's into CG art, uh yeah, digital, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And he told me, man, have you ever heard about 3D? And I'm like, 3D? No. He said, like, you could, it could help you a lot. And he just dropped the information. And I was so stressed with the timing. Any solution, will be taken instantly. So
Yeah.
the mentorship finished. I just Googled Blender downloaded Blender, the software. And then I spent like 1.5 weeks non-stop on Blender and ZBrush combining, sculpting digitally using it in Blender. But I was discovering the software from scratch. And I worked so much on the software that I ended up at the doctor with like a motion sickness. Yeah.
From all the shifting. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Because I worked like all night and days because I was like, I'm on a deadline. I need to finish this painting. And when I discovered 3D, it's basically the thing that solved all my problems. So I got like fascinated by the thing. I was like, the possibilities with this are endless.
Yes.
So I just grinded like badly the thing. And at the end, I couldn't walk straight. I was like falling. And my mom sent me to the doctor. She was like, just go, go check what's wrong. Cause I couldn't, everything was like, I don't know, moving. And I arrived
Like
at the
vertigo.
doctor and he said like, man, you have a motion sickness. What happened? And I said, I didn't move off my chair, but I was just like rotating everything. And because I was starting, I was like a little bit clumsy. So everything was like, woo, woo, woo. But long story short, I discovered 3D and this helped me a lot because now I will build my scene in 3D to have like a decent sense of lighting. At first, I would even do the textures and everything, but then at some point I was like, the same with sculpture. I'm becoming like a CG artist and not anymore an oil painter. So just cut all these things. Just use, just a lighting on some untextured assets. And from this, I will paint using colors from other references, like from life, from sketches. What I could do is if I'm doing a scene, at a certain point of the day, I would go out, sketch at this hour of the day. So I have the color notes, use the 3D for the structure, for the lighting. And then I would do a very kind of finished sketch. So I have the shapes, right. Because if I'm using 3D as a final, model, it's a little stiff and everything. So I redraw everything with a sketch to have it like nice, flowing. Then I lay on the color notes, and yeah, that's basically my process right at the moment.
Freaking awesome. Because I mean, I had already heard of Blender and I had friends in high school who used to mess around with like ZBrush and stuff.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was awesome. And you know what? It would be a really awesome tool for, any artists out there who maybe can't go to a specific place and time in the past, maybe, or even in like, maybe an image from their imagination just doesn't exist, right? It's so much easier to, build it on there because then, of course, you have to deal with the issues that imagination versus reality does, right? Where like you picture something working a certain way and it just physically cannot work. So that's a really awesome way of, working it out. And really getting even like I because I've seen the program and I've seen how it works. I love that you can choose like, if you want the light to be high up or if you want it to be lower down, like
Totally.
underneath. It's really awesome. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Genius.
the yeah, thanks Devin who mentioned this. When you watch James Gurney, for instance, he's doing a lot of miniatures for setting up his composition, which is awesome. But if you want to earn time, you can basically do the same on the computer.
Yeah.
And for people who would be like, yeah, but you should copy things from reality, blah blah blah. I'm like, it's even better than reality because you're basically creating your own ref, so you're directing everything. You're not anymore like, okay, I have this in front of me, I would like to move this or change the lighting, but I can't. So creating your own reference is also teaching you a lot. It's part of the work, in a way that it adds another layer to your process. And before you were like sketching and then painting, now you're like composing, sketching and painting, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's freaking awesome. Oh my God. It's like, wow. I think that's like,
You should try it out, I think. Yeah,
I'm gonna try it out. I'm so
it's
stoked about it.
awesome.
Yeah, because like
Yeah.
I just imagine like how you were thinking, like the possibilities are endless, right? Where like you could paint a scene from one side or one angle, and then if you feel like it, you can like save that, right? You save the file, and then you can revisit it, and then you can freaking paint it from a different angle, like
Yeah, exactly.
Like if there's something hidden inside of it, that is freaking cool. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
drop this technology in the 19th century, everyone goes crazy. They would be
Yeah.
like, Jean-Léon Gérôme would like,
He would have
whoa.
been like, what?
Yeah, because Messonnier was doing his own miniatures, like very, very detailed, even with like little textures and everything. So yeah, you would have shown him something like this, that he would have been down like to to
Yeah.
use that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even then, in the academic world, even they used photographs at the time that, photography was just starting out. Like
Yeah,
Bouguereau,
yeah. True.
90% of his stuff is from photographs. Can you
Hmm.
tell? Kind of. But he still remixed it in his own way, right? So I think, a lot of people today, they're very anti pictures or anti, like, I feel like the further away we get from that generation, the more people like seem to become polarized about what they did, what they didn't do, what was perfect that they did and what wasn't, right? They become more polarized where, instead, maybe those people of that time would have been much more welcoming of all of these opportunities because like you said, it's about creating a beautiful image. It doesn't matter how, what tools you use as long as the tool doesn't, you know, I guess as long as the tool doesn't become like a crutch, right? It doesn't hold you back.
Hmm.
Um, so I freaking love it. Yeah, they would have gone crazy for it. Um,
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
Totally.
And yeah. And then I also wanted to ask you,
Mm.
because you seem to also have a bit of a love for philosophy, which I do as well. So I
Hmm.
wanted to know what your personal philosophy is for creating work that is authentic and timeless.
Okay, so this is a big one. It's probably like the question of a whole lifetime, I think. I'm right into it now because I had like a kind of a mix between an art block and like existential questions. So I can't really answer because I don't even know if my work is truly authentic or not, because I'm made of many different things, comic books, at first, oil painting, contemporary art also, music. We talked about video games before, philosophy. So many fields interest me, and so many ways of thinking and seeing are interesting to me. So it's about, you know, taking a bit of things here and there, making your own cooking, and tasting. Okay, this is a little bit of me, but too much of this guy. So you redo your cooking, and now it's like more balanced and everything. But this is really a lifetime quest for me. This is in my opinion because I have a temper which is how to say, very curious,
Mhm.
and at the time I have a difficulty to make choices. So combine these things, of like discovering constantly new things and having a hard time to decide. It becomes very confusing at some point in your head.
Yeah.
But it also allows you to do connections that no one would have thought of. So it's a pro and a con at the same time. So I arrived to the States, so I was like seeking new imageries also, because each imagery I used is when I was, living in a specific country or using memories from this country, because I lived in China, in India, in Russia, in Morocco, all these kind of places. And now I live in the States. So I'm like, okay, I need to use some American imagery also, but how do I mix all this? Because the more culture I mix, the more it becomes like, what the hell is going on? Because you have like images from all over the world. So I can't really answer your questions precisely, but I think that to be authentic is about, as I said, cooking and always tasting how much of yourself is in the final dish. And when there's not enough of you, then just rebalance everything. Yeah, which doesn't
I
answer
was
at all, but that's the best I can
well,
come with.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Because it's so fascinating as a topic, which is why I wanted to ask you
Hmm.
that. It's actually also one of my big obsessions in this lifetime is to, try to understand what the self even is, right? So
Hmm.
I'm huge on like Alan Watts and like Buddhism and like Eastern philosophy,
Hmm.
precisely because their view of the self is so interesting. But there's this one thing that Alan Watts said that was, you can only understand the self through the other, right? And what you're saying
Hmm.
about, making this cooking and then seeing how much of you is in it, that's like one way of trying to differentiate what is me, what isn't me. But at the same time, the self is so complicated because the self isn't something that stays stagnant. It's something that changes and evolves
Yeah.
too. So it's like, oh, it can be so confusing. But I think, you know, as long as you are, following yourself, and it seems like your work is extremely authentic because the only person that could have made it is you, right? That already
Mm.
is like very
True, true.
authentic. Hmm. Um, I think that's what counts, It's like you see the work and you see, sure, maybe you can improve something, or maybe, oh, well, I kind of liked it, but maybe I didn't like it as much as like this other painting, right? As long as you just keep making things that resonate with you, I think that's it. That's
Yeah,
like,
it's true.
yeah, you
It's
can't really
true.
reach an answer.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, the thing also is when you're making an image, uh, we have to keep in mind that an image is made to be seen. So
Mhm.
it's basically a dialogue with whoever is watching. So you have to be careful about what you're saying through your image. And this is also confusing sometimes because we could, blend different techniques and approaches to have something that is visually authentic. But does the message carried by this image, is this message authentic? So there are two layers where you have to be authentic. And sometimes this is confusing me because I'm like, okay, I made an image which looks like no one,
Mhm.
but the message in it, maybe it's not really me. Like you could have a very unique image, but with a subject that is like, violent.
Mm.
So it's like, wow, this is amazing. That's people who watch this will be, this is amazing. But inside of me, I'm like, that's not really what I want to share with people, right? This happened at some point when I was doing a lot of battle scenes. It was cool, but at some point I was like, I'm so pacific myself. I hate violence, I hate
Yeah.
like conflict and all these kind of things. I never shout. I try to be calm.
Mm.
Why do I paint this? So some people will say like it's a matter of balance. You paint this, so you're chill in life and whatever. But I'm like, if I die tomorrow and people see my art, it's like, that's not really me, even though it's visually impacting, visually appealing, right? So that's the question I asked myself over the last month. As I told you, it's more about the content and what is your message rather than the technique. So yeah.
Wow. You're making me question everything.
Yeah, because when you're an artist, it's all about talking to people. So you're thinking, what should I say, and
Yeah. Yeah.
is
It's a
what
story.
is what I'm saying useful,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Or, oh God, I'm also part of the group of people who believes that a painting really isn't complete until someone sees it, right?
Hmm.
And what
Yeah.
what they give back to the painting by
Hmm.
viewing it. Which of course each person will have a different reflection, right? They'll have a different way of looking at the painting.
Hmm.
But I do agree that there is, the painting in itself holds a message. And so we do have to be careful about what message we're putting out into the world. Because it can be, oh, yeah, it almost
Yeah.
seems like, yeah, it's complicated. Really
Especially,
is.
yeah, especially when you're a professional, as for people who aspire to become professional artists, as you mentioned before, the pressure grows when you become a professional, because once you're a professional, you have, no matter if you like it or not, at some point you're gonna have to be recognizable. So you're gonna have to brand a little bit yourself, your imagery,
Yeah.
and that's where the pressure rises, because you're like, um I have to be identifiable. How to say
Identifiable. Yeah.
identifiable.
Hmm.
So what should be my visual identity? What should be my content identity?
Right.
And when you're not a professional, you can explore whatever, because you don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to. Uh, how do you say?
You can say it in French.
Reconnaissable.
Yeah,
That's
recognizable.
recognizable, yeah.
Yeah.
And that creates some pressure sometimes in my mind, because I'm like, okay, now I need to go straight into a direction. So let's make this direction authentic and what I want.
Mhm.
And the process of becoming an artist is very long. So you don't want to, how to say, like, go in zigzag all the time. In
Yeah.
my I mean, that you can, but for me, I feel better when I go like with a clear destination in mind.
Mhm.
So this clear destination sometimes can get confusing, and because you're a professional, you shouldn't show it too much, because if you show that you're uncertain, I don't know by which magic, but people will feel it, and they won't be too hyped about your work. They won't buy your work. Um, on the other way, when you're so confident about what you're doing, people somehow feel it, and things, start to flow. So it's all these kind of things which, creates like stress, and when you're starting to doubt, it can vastly become a bit overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, people will see it. And that's actually a really excellent marketing tip too, that, you can search around, right? You can jump around, but like
Mm-hmm.
if you're jumping around into something that you don't normally do, maybe it's better to keep it under wraps for now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like just keep it as a side thing. You don't have to show everything you paint.
Exactly.
Yeah. At BoldBrush, we inspire artists to inspire the world because creating art creates magic, and the world is currently in desperate need of magic. BoldBrush provides artists with free art marketing, creativity, and business ideas and information. This show is an example. We also offer written resources, articles, and a free monthly art contest open to all visual artists. We believe that fortune favors the bold brush. And if you believe that too, sign up completely free at boldbrushshow.com. That's BoldBrush show.com. The BoldBrush Show is sponsored by Faso. Now more than ever, it's crucial to have a website when you're an artist, especially if you want to be a professional in your career. Thankfully, with our special link, faso.com/podcast, you can make that come true and also get over 50% off your first year on your artist website. Yes, that's basically the price of 12 lattes in 1 year, which I think is a really great deal, considering that you get sleek and beautiful website templates that are also mobile friendly, e commerce, print on demand in certain countries, as well as access to our marketing center that has our brand new art marketing calendar. And the art marketing calendar is something that you won't get with our competitor. The art marketing calendar gives you day by day, step by step guides on what you should be doing today, right now, in order to get your artwork out there and seen by the right eyes so that you can make more sales this year. So, if you want to change your life and actually meet your sales goal this year, then start now by going to our special link, faso.com/podcast. That's faso.com/podcast. So I think that's excellent marketing advice too. Just like, don't
Mm-hmm.
confuse your people. Because even the way the algorithm works, right? The way the algorithm works is it connects you to people who have work that is similar to yours. And if you start showing a bunch of different things, the algorithm's gonna be like, who the hell? What
Yeah,
is this?
exactly. I think it's about some purist will say like, then if you're thinking about marketing and branding, it's not art anymore, which somehow could be true, but I feel that it's just about accepting that you're gonna have a major thing which is gonna be your branding and marketing, and it doesn't stop you from exploring a lot of things, on the side. But I think maybe someone will say I'm wrong, and I'm totally open to this, but I think that having one thing that you're recognizable with um, is basically what's going to make you successful in terms of, popularity, money, everything. But on the other hand, my artistic side will say this is not what matters the most. So if at some point you feel that you deeply need to explore something, just go for it. I don't say, uh, I can't pronounce myself on this because there aren't
It's
really
okay.
rules. There are people who explore and are successful. There are people
Yeah.
who brand are successful. There are people who brand and are not successful, and whatever. So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like there are people who, God, even Picasso, right? He had like a blue period, right? And he did the same. Honestly, I'm not a fan of Picasso, but
Mm.
but even he, who was like a modernist, who did the
Hmm.
same crap all the time, technically he had his time periods even within his work, because that's, as we were saying before with the philosophy of the self, right? It's something that evolves. Like, yes, you're going to have that personal brand, but, keep it recognizable enough even within, those things that people look at a painting and be like, oh yeah, that's from when this person was in this period of their life, right?
Hmm.
Um, and that'll just come naturally. And like you said, it's if it's something that really needs, like your insides are just screaming that this needs to come out, like I have to pursue this, just go for it. Like, I mean, your real fans and the people who really appreciate you, they're gonna love you anyway. They're gonna be like, oh my God, look at this. This is awesome, right?
Yeah, true. There's a comic book artist named Moebius. I don't know if you know him.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's really well known into the comic. Like he's considered one of the comic book gods,
Damn.
from the 60s. So he's
Mm.
yeah, yeah. And he constantly changed his style over the years. And this has been basically his branding. I'm someone who's changing, but you always feel there's a flavor, like a similar flavor. So it's changing, but remaining with the same kind of, I don't know how to say, yeah, flavor.
Yeah.
So this can also be a way to go. Um, Probably what can be more difficult is when you totally change things from A to Z and you go like in an opposite direction and then another opposite. And this is difficult because you don't really know the destination. But if you're just like Moebius or Picasso and you keep evolving and that's your motto and you don't really know where you're gonna go, but your destination is basically the way, like the like if you like Buddhism, right?
Yeah.
There's no way to
Yeah.
happiness. Happiness the way. It would be like there's no way to I don't know what. So it's
Hmm.
also branding somehow in itself. I don't even know if what I'm saying makes any sense. I'm just thinking and
I think it makes
talking.
sense.
Okay, people are gonna
It
be
makes
like, this
perfect
guy
sense.
is like so confused.
Nah. I
Okay.
mean, we're in a very complicated path. Because I don't see the path of the artist as being, we're just painting pretty pictures, right? I see the path of the artist as like how we were discussing, it's a path through understanding the world around us and ourselves and,
Hmm.
the things that are important. So there's so many layers, especially when you're a realist painter, right? You're painting quote unquote reality, but you're also storytelling through those paintings. That adds more layers of complexity that, you can't create these things without experiencing life. So it's like the artist is basically someone who experiences life and then has a way of rehashing it in a way that makes people see it and appreciate it. I mean, we're living life. That's what we do.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I hope that made sense. Oh my God. Um,
It's just questions that are hard to answer with a very universal, answer because if I'm thinking back of what I just said for the last, let's say, 15 minutes,
mhm,
there are a lot of contradictions somehow. I'm like, yeah, branding is good, but for some other people, branding is about not having a branding, which doesn't make any sense compared to what I said. So it's just, I think everyone, uh, should find what works for him or her. And yeah, that's it. As
yeah,
you said, also we also evolve through time. I think having a branding is my opinion right now because I'm also searching myself for something, so I'm
mhm,
going towards this direction.
yeah,
But maybe in 10 years from now, I'm another Matthew, so what I said just doesn't make any more sense. So
there you
yeah,
go.
I hope it resonates with people who are searching the same thing as I do right now. And if for other people, then yeah, see you in 10 years, or I don't
Yeah,
know, 2 months. I don't know when I
yeah,
have when I have discovered more things. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's a wonderful testament too to the evolution of, our perspectives and who we are and the way we see the world. One day we think, oh yeah, it's totally like this, and then the next day we're like, nah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah, exactly.
that's part of life. And life is, a group of contradictions, which is why navigating life is so complicated and why, with this podcast, I love that every single guest that I have on, their paths have been completely different.
Yeah,
And what they've prioritized, I guess what they have in common is that they've prioritized creating beautiful pieces, something that calls to them. So there is that thread in common, but the way that they do things, their processes, totally different. And how they even landed in their career, mind blowing.
Mhm.
Which, I did want to ask you also. Um, what was that transition like for you to go from student to living artist, like full-time artist?
Okay, so this has been a little random because I started painting when I was 21 in Romania. So I had like just one scholar year of training. And at the end of the year, well, let me rewind. So I was like student there in Romania, and in the middle of my studies, I attend a conference there with the school, and I see a woman speaking, and I see she's French, and I'm like, I heard about this person, and the person happened to be Catherine Millet, which is the director of Art Press, which is a leading contemporary art magazine in France, and I'm like, wow, what is she doing here in Romania? And after the conference, everyone's drinking, eating a little bit, like there is a post-conference cocktail or whatever. And I go to her and I just say, wow, nice meeting you. You're in Romania. So we start discussing a little bit. And it was really out of the blue. I just, started chatting because I was interested in, saying hi. And so we discuss. And at the end of the scholar year, when I have to go back in Belgium, because I was studying in Belgium back then, I'm like, I've met this person from Art Press. I could send her my work just to have advice, on how to navigate as an artist, any tips for like a student who wants to become a professional artist. So I send her images of my work, and I receive a call a few days later, and Art Press is actually willing to do like 3 full pages on my work in their magazine. So I was like, wow, this is really, really cool. So got these 3 pages, galleries starting to contact me. I picked one of the galleries, which I felt was the best fit. And then I became a professional after 1 year of painting. And since then, nothing stopped. So yeah, it's really, it can be as simple as that for like young people who listen to us. Sometimes just, friendly talk with someone can open like big doors without even knowing it. So never be afraid to, talk to people from the industry, from the market, from the community, whatever. Just go for it.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
see, your path, wow, totally different.
Yeah.
Holy crap. That is so awesome though. That's like right place, right time, right person, and right preparedness too, because you got to that point where like, you know what? I think my work is good at the moment. I'm gonna reach out. You never know. So that
Yeah,
that really,
exactly.
brings the value of networking.
Yeah, and I remember people saying like, "Don't send her work. You're gonna look stupid." Because she's really like, it was really top tier.
Mm,
And I was like, whatever. If she says no, it says no. If I don't have an answer anyway, I'm 21. It's like that's not the first no I will receive. So,
mhm.
and I just send it. So also this, don't listen to other people when you feel like doing something. Just do it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
why not?
yeah, why not? No one's gonna die. So
Yeah. The worst you can hear
yeah,
is no, like
yeah,
that's
exactly.
like wow. Or even like, oh, we love your work, but not yet, right? Because that also happens, or
Hmm.
they'll keep you in mind for the future. That's the other thing, people don't often think about, is if you don't put yourself out there, no one's gonna see you. No one's gonna magically know to call you because you're an expert in this one thing if they have no idea you exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So kudos, bro. That's freaking awesome. You
Yeah, it was
shot your
super.
shot.
Yeah, exactly. And so many things can happen like this. Like, how did I enter the American market also? Is I was sending my work to Steve from Arcadia, right? Who's
Yep.
like top tier gallery in fine art when I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to become a fine artist 100%. And and the same, he answers me like long mail. I was like stoked. I was like, wow, this guy really takes the time. He really respects artists. So
Mm-hmm.
he writes me a long mail, but basically it's like thanks, but no thanks. And I'm like, and my mom says like, oh, there is Michelle, an American friend of us, who's going with her boys in Los Angeles because she has some work there to do. You told me about the States. Maybe it would be good to hop on the plane with her, and just spend a week there. And I'm like, okay. And so I took the plane and I actually went to Arcadia, saw a guy at the counter and said, oh, you're Steve. And he says, yeah. And I said, I'm Matthew. We communicated by email. And he's like, he doesn't recognize me because,
Mm-hmm.
so many emails daily. But I tell him that I came from France. And he's like, you came from France? Wow. And there was no show around. They were switching shows. So there was nothing on the walls. But he tells me, like, you come from such a long way. Let me show you the future show in the basement storage. So I'm like, wow, super excited. So I go down and I look at all the paintings. And because I'm passionate about painting, I wasn't just looking around like, well, nice. No, I was like this close to the canvas, looking which varnish they use, what is their technique. And I think he felt there is like, oh, this guy is really into painting. And at some point he tells me like, can you show me again your work? So I'm like, sure. So I show him my work and he goes like, oh, yes, I remember. And then he looks at me and says, you know what? Do me 2 pieces for our upcoming group show and we'll see. And that's how I exhibited with Arcadia. Just like taking a plane, arriving, doing like, okay, once again, I'm going to talk to people normally, just, hey, what's up? Yeah, we exchanged by email. And then it happened. If I would have stayed in France, I wouldn't have, entered the gallery. If what I was thinking, like, oh, he said thanks, but no thanks by email. There's no point for me to meet him, then nothing would have happened. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
And I've met Steve. Steve is really nice. And it's
Yeah,
cool
he's a
that you
cool
went.
dude.
It's cool that you went when Arcadia was still in the West Coast because now
Pasadena,
they're in New
LA,
York.
yeah.
Yeah. And Steve is awesome. He's I think he probably really loved that you actually went out there and said, "Hey, I'm visiting," because he's the type of person, and I respect him 100%, the type of person who really puts in the effort for his artists. Like he is
Mm-hmm.
so like you said, like he left a huge paragraph. Right. He cares. He really cares about, the people he puts on his walls. So
Yeah, that
you
was the
reflected
first.
that.
Yeah, that was the first time a gallery who's not interested in working with me. Uh, it's the first time someone who's not interested to have your work would still take so much time to try to advise you and guide you. I was like, this is unique
Mhm.
because basically, if people are not interested to work with you on the moment, they will not even answer.
Yep. Exactly.
Um, if they're slightly interested, maybe they'll say like, no, we'll, just contact us in a few years or whatever. And he was like, yeah, basically, I don't need any more artists, but still, here's what you
Yep.
can do. And I've been really touched by this. I said like, if every gallerist could be like this, oh man, artists will feel much more confident because so many artists, hate galleries or are scared to contact galleries because there's, they're preventing their egos from being touched. And of course you feel down if someone doesn't even answer your email. It means like your work interests us, your work doesn't interest us at the level that we're not even going to take time to answer,
Yeah, that's
which
painful.
for an aspiring artist is really difficult.
Mhm.
So yeah, if everyone would be like Steve, much easier. People would be
Yeah.
pumped, confident, and yeah, much better.
He's yeah, I agree. If every gallerist was like Steve, I think there would be a lot more art being sold on the market. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, that's really awesome. And speaking actually of galleries, for you personally, because I think every artist today, considering that the market, can fluctuate, a lot of artists today need to have, passive income or other forms of income. So my question to you is, what has been one of the best ways for you to make money? Basically, has it been galleries? Has it been, prints or selling yourself?
Mhm. So first I started with galleries because everyone told me, like my elders, the teachers, the professional artists and everything were like they were working with galleries. They were like, there's the gallery's taking your cut, a cut. This is how things work, blah blah. So I was like, okay, this is the system. So I went with this for a long time, and at some point I met my future wife.
Oh,
Yeah, Nogi-san. She's from my hometown in France. We moved here together. um, and she's into illustration, so she's working with many companies, many different type of clients. She's also doing like frescoes, illustration for books, for trailers for video games, a lot. And I was like, this makes so much sense because you're basically having your identity spread into very different fields, and this brings money because you don't put all your eggs in the same basket, right? So I was like, I'm only with galleries. They take 50% of my work. I still need to pay framing, shipping. My business plan looks so weak compared to artists like my wife. So I rethought all the whole process, and I started to expand, telling myself like, uh, with who I'd be hyped to work. Okay, I'd be hyped to work with like these kind of people, these kind of things. And that's how I started to work with like bands, for instance, like album covers, illustration for other projects, for digital things also. And at first I was like, who's gonna want oil painting outside of the oil painting market, because it's so traditional and old somehow. And Nogi told me like, put it the way around. In a market which is highly digitalized, having like an authentic oil painting is so unique. And she told me like there are not many painters who can create any type of imagery with oil. So I felt like, okay, there's an opening there. And I started to yeah, brand myself in this way, like, using a traditional medium like oil painting, but for cool and like up-to-date projects. And this is really exciting. And people with whom I work, they were always so hyped because in their super like modern envy, they were having, my oil painting in hands, and they were like, wow, this is so cool. And in some projects, they even hired me, even though they don't need it for the final product, but just for the hype of having an old painting symbolizing this whole project that we're in. So right now I'm like, yeah, spread between all these different things, and also prints and everything, of course. So yeah, that's an interesting way to go if you want to expand. um, Always remember that not many people expand with oil painting, so an opening there.
yeah. You're the second person who's told me this actually, because I recently interviewed an artist called Kailun, and he was recently hired as an artist by Marvel,
Oh
precisely
really?
because,
Wow.
yeah, precisely
Yeah.
because, there's so few oil painters in the
Hmm.
illustration market, in the, I guess everything that today has become like Comic-Con and all these conventions and video games. It's very, very rare to find someone who's like classically trained that way. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So it's
Yeah, so
great.
that's something cool. Just trying to keep your mind open and not be like, oil painting should stay on the easel in the museum and gallery walls. It can be much more than this because, as I said, in the end, it's about an image. An image can travel through so many different fields, so why not?
Exactly. Yeah. And
Mm.
again, like it's so funny how we went from like oil painting being this archaic, oh, it's dead thing to Whoa, that's so rare. No one does that.
Yeah, because it's rare, and it's also, for a long time I was a little complexed by the fact of doing oil painting, because I'm not 100% fine art in my daily life. As I said, I play video games. My brother is a semi-pro skateboarder. So I navigate with. My dad is a scientist. Many people from different fields, and I was a little bit, I'm doing oil painting, like, yeah, I'm in, this old dude thing, with like dusty still lives and everything. But at some point I felt like, no, actually it's just a tool. Because if I meet someone who's like telling me I'm a cello player, I'm like, wow, it's so cool. So why should I feel that oil painting is like, not so cool? So I said, okay, it's just what I'm doing with it, right? So it totally changed my mind. I said, with oil painting, I can do lots of cool stuff for like cool projects and cool people. I'm not stuck, with the old guard that is like, just paint from life and all these kind of things. Yeah. No offense to this kind of thinking, but I really wanted to get away from this.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I think, if there's something that really, kind of annoys me about, certain people is when they try to force other people to do something that, you know,
Yeah.
maybe doesn't work for them. Which is
Mm-hmm.
why, I'm also all for like, if it works, it works. If you like it, do it. If it doesn't work, don't do it. That's it.
Yeah,
But don't force
exactly.
other people to like, do it because then you're forcing them out of their authentic path. They're out of,
Mm-hmm.
maybe something that they should be experiencing. So I'm 100% with you on that. Like, just do it. Just chill. It's cool.
Yeah. Still, I spend a lot of time looking at these old guards paintings because technically
Mm,
it's fascinating, right? But I want to bring this to something that, yeah, is more lined up with who I am and my expectations and all these kind of things. I just need. I'm a blend of many things, as I said, with like comics and everything, and I don't want to, be stuck in something that is a little towards the past too much, because I
yeah.
love creating bridges and finding new stuff. So yeah, it's like take the old painting and just like move forward with it as much as we can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean that's what the old masters would have wanted anyway. If they wanted paintings to stay the same, we wouldn't have had a transition, of paintings in the first place. Like
Mm-hmm.
we would still, we'd still be painting like in medieval times with have absolutely no idea how perspective works, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Which thanks to Da Vinci, it's a big deal.
yeah,
So
yeah, true.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's how it is. And then do you have any final advice for someone who maybe is a student looking to become a full-time artist and they want to make that jump? Do you have any final tips?
Yeah, so if you believe in yourself, go for it. Like the best example is Nogi-san. I told you, like my wife. She was into engineering school, and she felt like she wants to be an artist. She was always drawing, but she had no support from her family. Some people were telling her like, you shouldn't do that. But she tried. She worked in a convention, her first convention, selling her art. It worked really well, and she felt like, okay, there's a possibility that it works. So she dropped everything and started her artistic career, and it actually worked very, very well. So sometimes we walk, after work, and we're discussing, like, imagine if you wouldn't have made this decision back then, you know. So if you feel really convinced that you can do it, there's no reason to fail. So just go for it. If you feel a little unsure, um, there's no hurry. You can still wait and jump when you're sure. So I wouldn't pressure too much on this question. Just do things when you're sure and jump, because there's no reason to fail. And if you feel like waiting, just wait a little bit, because so many people pressure themselves also, like, I have to jump now or I will never be able to do it. And they put they put so much pressure onto themselves that in the end they're stuck. They just don't move. Right. So yeah, take it easy. And when you feel ready, just go for it and it will work.
Beautiful.
That's what I
Yeah.
can advise. And it works in any fields, right? So I felt ready. I went to talk to this lady. It worked. Nogi-san felt ready. She jumped. It worked. Everyone who's a professional artist, it's most of the time the same. At some point, they feel like, okay, let's go. And they just go and it works. So
Yeah. It's about answering the call, It's like having that interior voice and like actually listening to it, like now, like.
And once again, if you're unsure, take your time. There's no rush for being professional artist. I was listening to this guy, Francois Cheng, a Chinese man who arrived in France when he was a kid and who actually learned French so well that he became a writer and one of the most acclaimed French writer from nowadays. And he said that he published his first book at 50 years old. And he became so respected that he entered the French Academy. So he said there's no hurry, just do things when you're ready, and that's it. So best advice would be no pressure. Yeah.
Yes. I love that. I love that so much because, especially, when you grow up in the United States and actually in any culture that's, motivated by the big three careers, right? So like lawyer, doctor, engineer, right? Any culture that forces you into any of those careers, it's going to be really hard to not have that pressure, right? It's going to be really hard to convince everyone else that like it's okay to slow down. It's okay to take your time. And I'm actually relearning that because I went back to back to back to all of these academic schools, and it destroyed me because you feel so much pressure to like do things how they teach you and to impress other people, and it becomes like much more important than the actual work, right? It becomes like it's almost like I for a while forgot why I was even there in the first place anymore. It was like I don't know. But thanks to that awesome piece of advice you gave, which is slow down. It's okay. I've actually rediscovered it. So I can say that, as a testament of yes, I've done it and it does work. It's okay. It's okay to slow down. There's no pressure. Maybe, get a day job if you need money, obviously, but there's no pressure.
Yeah, we should remember also that our brain doesn't function well under stress. When you're stressed, your brain is just, you're not going to make the right decision and the right thinking and everything. So you need to make decisions when you're relaxed, when you're feeling comfortable, feeling good. So yeah, that's the best way to go, I think.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And now I want to ask you a bit of a strange question, which is there anything, right, outside of painting, right, outside of being an artist, anything that you're secretly an expert in that you like people wouldn't know unless, they knew you or they asked you like, hey, what else are you like good at?
Okay. Expert or just like good?
Well, something you're very, very knowledgeable on that maybe has nothing to do with painting or,
Yeah, okay. I played hockey for a long time.
Wow.
Like
That's
very,
cool.
very long time. Yeah. I played guitar also a lot. There's a small portion of my life where I wanted to become a rock star.
Oh.
It didn't last long, but I was really hyper focused on this, like days and nights playing guitar. I play online FPS 1 hour and a half every day. I was a hardcore Counter-Strike player, and then my wife prefers to play Valorant, so we play Valorant now. So I'm taking this very seriously. Like every day we play, in ranking and ranked and everything. I think I'm so bad at cooking that becomes incredible. Like,
Wow.
yeah, I'm an expert in not knowing how to cook. I'm like very, very bad.
No way.
Yeah, which is strange, but my sister is a cook. She opened her restaurant, so I'm a little ashamed, but yeah, I'm very, very bad. And the last thing, I don't know. There are so many things. Yeah, comics. Probably not a lot of people know that that's probably from all my list, the one I'm the most how to say aware of and
Mm.
where I have the most knowledge. Funny comic books with like very funny characters, totally opposite of like painting. It's just like crazy stories with like very eccentric characters and everything. It's you
Mm.
can feel it's the same person. It's impossible to make the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was interesting. Oh my God. See, I love asking that because, obviously you're a person, right? You have
Hmm.
dimensions.
Yeah.
So you have, of course, your artist side, but then it's like, what else do you do on the outside, right? What other things, bring that extra spice into your life that,
Yeah, I mean, painting and being an artist is my number one pick. Like, if I have to be, if we rewind and I'm about to be born and I'm asked, like, what path you want, I'll be number one artist. But if number one artist is not possible, I still have a list of like so many things I would have enjoyed, right? I'm very about, how to say, I'm not someone who's bored on a regular basis. If I can't paint, I'm like hooked on something else. And yeah, I have a lot of passions. But being an artist is number one, that's for sure.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Everything else feeds into it maybe, or, it's like you rotate them, which is great.
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Um, so now for our closing, I
Hmm.
wanted you to tell us about your upcoming group show at Haven Gallery and then also your upcoming show with Beautiful Bazaar.
Yeah, so I we're having two pieces with Nogi at Haven now. The theme of the show was Duality, and each artist was asked to do two paintings, you know, dialoguing with each other on the
Mm.
theme of duality. And then I thought like Nogi is using black ink, black and white. I'm using oil painting, so they're basically the opposite on the spectrum. And I felt this is already a cool concept in itself. So I proposed the gallery to do one painting with my art and another painting with Nogi's art and with the subject that communicates and the techniques which are opposite. And she was hyped. So we have these two pieces there. So we're really happy. So first exhibition together, more to come hopefully. And yeah, there is the Beautiful Bizarre exhibition. I think it's in November, so I need to create a piece for this too. And right now I'm exploring some other imagery more linked with America, like Western art and everything, and I want to see how I can blend all these kind of things. So there's a lot, in French we say beaucoup de pain sur la planche, meaning a lot of bread on the table. There's a lot of things to work on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Oh, and then you also mentioned you have some prints that you're going to be taking out.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a sign release soon with one of the latest paintings, the one which is in Heaven Gallery actually. So I
Mhm.
want to do some prints with this, and yeah, prints are cool because it basically allows anyone to have your art. I like that because sometimes when you sell your paintings, they're expensive, so it's reserved for a very small portion, of
Mhm.
people. And I love to do prints because anyone can have your art, and the same, some artists that I love, I will never be able to buy their work, but I can buy a print. So prints are a very cool way to keep art circulating, between people and things like this. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. And then of course, where can people find more of your work?
Oh, Instagram, of course, TikTok, website, thread last lately. And yeah, I think that, and YouTube, I'm gonna I'm gonna launch I have a YouTube channel, but which is like, desert. I got, but I want to, start with a new concept of like talking about anecdotes,
Mm.
artist anecdotes, from funny ones, to like more serious ones and everything. Just like to speak about how is it to be an artist and all this kind of thing. So yeah, when I will find time though, but that's on my to-do list.
Yeah, making videos can be, it's a lot.
Time consuming. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for having me. It was great
Of
chatting about art. And thanks again for the invitation.
course.